Welcome to Everything Casual, bringing you original football casual videos from the golden era of the 80s and 90s, right up to current day. Football away day stories and historic clashes between football firms. Subscribe so you don't miss out. We upload videos every week.
We had a thing going with Middlesbrough. Middlesbrough were, I think, pound for pound, Middlesbrough have been for years one of the best firms out there because they're big lumps and that's all they got to do was go to football. And we had a thing with them at Everton. You know, usually your local rivalries are United City, fucking Liverpool to a certain extent. And we had this thing with Boro, like if I come here one day and we were in the pub, thought they'd long gone. And then one of the lads had a call, said, fucking hell, they're walking to Lime Street. And when we fucking came on side and we were in these couple of pubs and we emptied on them, mate, and they had to go, but we did them like.
When I research firms and rivalries, I am pretty much aware of all of it. But sometimes I find out about a deep-rooted hatred, a history of violence and rivalry. That's when I found out about Everton and Boro. As usual, we will hear from top lads from both sides. Let's start with the one and only legend Paul Debrick from Boro. His book is very, very good, and I urge anyone that is into the football casual culture to go out and get it. It's full of great stories about different firms from up and down the UK. But anyway, let's jump in and listen to what he had to say about battles with the Everton mob. Everton's reputation speaks for itself. The blue half of Liverpool were always a formidable mob. Whether we played them at home or at Goodison Park, they always turned out and were always game as fuck. I've lost count how many times I've been to Goodison Park over the years, but every trip had one thing in common: you got what you went for, trouble. I always felt that Everton were pretty similar to ourselves, loved the element of surprise, always came early, and loved an off. Andy Nichols' book, Scally, is one of the best football hooligan books available. What's good about it, and what makes it better than the rest, is that he tells it like it is. No bullshit. When he writes about Boro in his book and mentions the offs with us, I know he's not talking shite. Because I was there at the mall, from the time outside the Yankee Bar and the Crown, to Boxing Day, I was there. Our accounts of what happened might differ slightly in terms of numbers and so on, but the facts are true. Our history goes back a long way with the Blues, and we've had some memorable battles with them. Every time we play them, it's talked about for weeks beforehand. I wish we could have played them every other week. That would have been fun. One time in the 90s we took quite a tasty mob down there. We'd walked about before the game expecting Everton to make a show, but disappointingly they didn't, apart from a few lads just before kick-off. With no tube before the game, we walked around Goodison like we owned the place. Every one of our lads was up for it. So when the Blues didn't show, I thought they'd lost their way a bit, and obviously weren't up for it. How wrong I was. A couple of their lads told us to go to Stanley Park to the Arkle pub after the game, and that's where we'd get it. Nice one, I thought, and couldn't wait for the game to finish. We left Goodison Park. We had the numbers, had the top lads, and I expected it to go off big time. We'd managed to shake off the police and everyone was ready. Walking through Stanley Park, I told our lads to be alert. I expected an ambush, but it never came. We got to the Arkle, went in and ordered drinks. Our spotters were outside, waiting for Everton to show, and I couldn't understand why they didn't. Some time had passed, and people thought it was a no-show, so some of our lads started to do one. When a couple of lads who were in a car offered me a lift home, I accepted, and we set off. I was bitterly disappointed. The times I'd been to Everton, and we'd always got it, and this time we got nothing. We'd been in the car about an hour when I received a phone call from one of our lads who had stayed in the Arkle. I was gobsmacked at what I was listening to. Just after I left the pub, 2 of Everton's lads had come in and said to our 40 lads who were left, "Stay put, Everton are on their way." The lad who phoned me told me they thought they were full of shit, so they didn't bother to ring us. We must have only been gone about 5 minutes before, and could have easily been back at the Arkle, but it wasn't to be. He explained to me that the 2 lads had said to ours, If you want it, follow us. Foolishly they did, straight into an ambush. A short way down the road the Everton mob met them head on. By all accounts, our lads were doing quite well, probably because they'd picked up fence posts and rocks on the way. The fighting went on for some time, and some of the Boro lads received bad injuries. One of my mates was slashed across the neck and needed stitches to the wound. Everton's mob came out on top on this occasion. I was pissed off, to say the least. If only I'd have stayed a while longer, I'd have been there for the lads, but life is full of if-onlys. Well done, Everton. You won the battle, but the war was far from over. We were to get our revenge on Boxing Day, when we played them at the Riverside Stadium. They'd been told to come to the Wickerswell pub and to get there early doors. Incidentally, I was head doorman at the Wickers at the time, so I knew I'd be there, which was convenient. We'd all planned to be in town as early as we could so we wouldn't be surprised. We wanted revenge, and we wanted it pretty bad. What happened to our lads at Everton was a kick in the balls to us, so Boxing Day was payback time. Forget goodwill to all men and all that shite, they were getting it, no matter what. Christmas Day came, and all I could think about was the next day. I phoned the lads up, and instead of all the best mate, we just talked about what was going to go off the following day. When Boxing Day finally came, I arrived for work at the pub at 11 a.m. Just up the road was the Ayresome Park pub, and within half an hour it was full to the rafters with every top lad we had. I remember walking in there to see my brother Mark, who was working the door, and I was over the moon that everyone had kept their word and was in town early. Everyone inside the two pubs kept a low profile so as not to get sussed by our intelligence unit, and it worked a treat. There wasn't a copper in sight. Now all we needed was Everton to show, and it would be payback time. I returned to Wickersworld, and we sat talking about the usual shite you talk about on Boxing Day, how many pairs of socks you got for Christmas from your auntie and so on. I'd just returned from the toilets, where I'd had a chocker line of coke to get me charged up, when one of our lads came bursting through the door. They're here, they're here. At first I thought it was a wind-up, but to my delight I could see around 50 lads outside coming straight for the door. Nice one, I thought. They'd made a show and were now in our town, on our soil, and wanting it. Did we oblige? You bet we did. There were only a handful of us in the pub at the time, but we headed straight for the door. Glasses flew over my head and out onto the street. One of the Everton's lads ran forward and attempted to spray the door with CS gas. I don't know whether the clown was cockeyed or not, but he missed the door and it went up the wall outside. There was a slight standoff for a few seconds while a ginger twat called me on. What happened next was brilliant. Someone in the other pub shouted what was going on, the doors burst open, and the road quickly filled with our mob. Everton's attention was diverted by this, and in a split second I saw my chance. Smack. I connected with a corker of a right hand, and the ginger cunt fell backwards into the road. I followed up with a penalty kick to his head for good measure. I could see some of them were carrying blades, which just made me go off it. And when the other lads with me in the pub came steaming out, I shouted, "These fuckers are tooled up." All thoughts of what had happened at Goodison came flooding back to me, and all I wanted to do was as much damage in as short a time as I possibly could. By now our entire mob was bearing down on Everton, and to give them their due, they stood their ground, and under the circumstances, were game on. Fighting was now taking place on both sides of the road. It didn't matter where you looked. It was going off. There wasn't a copper in sight, a perfect opportunity for revenge. I knew this was going to be good. Across the road I could see around 10 Everton who'd split off and were fronting some of our lads. I ran straight across at them, and they didn't see me coming from the side. I drop-kicked the nearest one, who flew into a couple of their lads, and they went down like skittles. Those who fell were quickly engulfed by kicks and punches. The Boro mob were hell-bent on revenge that day. We wanted to show Everton we hadn't lost it. I loved every minute. As I was fighting under the bridge, I turned and saw a big lad wearing a Tommy Hilfiger top running fast. He had a yellow craft knife in his hand, and it looked like he'd just cut someone. I just saw red and stopped him dead in his tracks with a right hand, and he fell like a bus lift. "You scouse bastard," I thought. "You're getting it." I rained as many punches and kicks on him as I could. He tried to cover his head with his arms, but it was no use. I booted him all over the road like a case ball. I was hitting so many people, it was like playing Bat the Rat at the amusement arcade. Halfway through the off, 2 railway police came running out of the station, which was next to us, shouting for assistance. They ran about like headless chickens and clearly didn't know what to do next. One of them was shouting, "Come on lads, stop." That tickled me. I mean, picture the scene, up to 400 lads half killing each other, and he's shouting, "Please stop." "Okay lads, everyone back inside the pub." Don't think so, do you? We backed the Everton mob under the bridge. Some of them at the front were still trying to be game, but most of them were now backing off. I was in a different zone by this time. Adrenaline took over, or was it the coke? I wasn't sure, but I was buzzing no end. I heard sirens screaming everywhere now, and it was only a matter of minutes before the inevitable swarm of police came. We quickly attacked again, and lads were laid out in the middle of the road, getting kicked all over. The police came in massive numbers and ran about with their batons out, trying to calm things down. When order was restored, they put a massive police line between us and the Everton lads. A short while later, I walked straight over to their mob near the ground and screamed abuse at them. It was pointless really, but it made me feel better at the time. We'd got revenge that day, and boy, did it taste sweet. They came to us that day wanting it, but I don't think they expected the reception they got. They thought they'd surprise us, but we were ready for them and turned the tables. Victory was ours that day, but respect where respect is due, and Everton have my respect all day long. I returned to town before the match started and took stock over a drink with some of the lads. Everyone was happy how things had gone, except that one of our lads had been slashed across the chest and later needed 30 stitches. We still talk about this day, and most agree it was one of the best offs we've had. What made it better is that we were left to it, and the police didn't turn up until it was nearly over. Talking to one of our intelligence officers at a match later, he told me they'd just sat down to eat in the police station when they got the call, and it took them 10 minutes to get there. So, unluckily for them, but luckily for us, we got our late Christmas present. As it takes 2 to tango, I asked Andy Nichols, who was there at some of our most violent encounters, to contribute his recollections of the Boro-Everton clashes from a Merseyside perspective. This is his take on our rivalry. The phone rang in my office and I picked it up, hoping it wasn't the landlord after his rent again. "Okay, Andy, Paul Debrick here. I'm the big man who walked into your mob at Boro that Boxing Day you got twatted all over and called you all wankers. Pleased to meet you too, Paul. I remember you well, very fucking well indeed." At the same time thinking, please tell me you're not the big cunt I hit over the head with a fence pole on Scotty Road when we done you the same season. So this was the big fella called Paul, my publisher had said, was interested in having a chat with me. Apparently he was writing a book and wanted to talk. Nothing serious, just after a few pointers, and maybe we could be of help to each other. Being a person who rarely gives a fuck, I happily told the publisher to pass on my phone number and I'd see what this big fella called Paul had to say for himself. A day later, I was sat in my office when he rang, and from the other end came a voice I had never heard, but immediately felt at ease with, as though I had known him for years. The brick had landed, contact had been made, and we chatted for ages, laughing and joking about things we would previously have wanted to injure each other about. That's what it is like today. People who say any different are talking bollocks. Footy violence is over, dead. Not quite buried, but dead all the same. The stuff we spoke about, basically 20 years of toe-to-toes, 20 years of proper hurt, 20 years of slashings, kickings, nickings and dickings, with the odd tactical retreat thrown in for good measure, will never see the light of day in this country again. In a nutshell, Paul told me about his Hooligan memoirs and said that he was not a lover of the genre. Most are a pile of shit, were his words. But of course, he soon won me over with his comments that my autobiography, Scally, was the best he had read, not because it's a work of art or well written, but because it tells it as it was, with loads of fucking violence. He went on to tell me he was after other firms' views on Boro's mob, and was it okay to use some stuff out of Scally about the clashes we had. I appreciated him asking, as it's very easy to simply rob the odd quote from other books and use it anyway. I'm a fucking master at it. I told him I would be in touch. We said our goodbyes, and when I put the phone down, thought to myself, what the fuck was that all about? Having listened to him for 20 minutes, I knew I was dealing with proper Boro, and thought, do I need this hassle? I'll probably upset someone up there and have to face the music. The thing is, I can't cover up cracks or skip issues. If I saw it, I tell it how it was. I'm probably the only hooligan author banned for life from their club for writing a book. I am sure there will another soon though, nailed the same way I was. I did not have to think long. I was never going to say no, but if the following bit upsets any of you, well, yes, I am sorry. Probably for mentioning the amount of times your lads were cut by ours. But that's the way it was at Everton. We were famous or infamous for it, and I won't bullshit you. When our firm was 500 strong, half, maybe more, were knife men. Boro were not the only firm to get stabbed or slashed, but the difference is they came back again and again and again, and that's why we rate them. The first time I went to Ayresome Park was late 70s for an FA Cup tie. I was only 14, I kept my gob shut and was glad to get home in one piece. The place frightened me. I don't remember much about the day. We lost 3-2, and a Boro lad was stabbed up the arse, meaning the coaches were held back by the police while they looked for lads with blood on them. There were plenty, by the way, as their lads had given as good as they got. They always did, and it never changed in the 25 years we played each other while I was bang at it. I'll be honest and admit none of our lads even knew. Boro had a firm until they turned up years later for another FA Cup tie at Goodison. I was one of, well, it wasn't fucking many that were in the Crown pub near Lime Street Station when they bowled in and the lad leading the mob ordered 160 pints of bitter. I looked at the doors, and coming through was a tidy firm. It was more than tidy, it was awesome. And I knew that if we did not get out, we were fucked. The few Everton lads dotted about in there all thought the same, and there were a few half-empty bottles of Skol left on tables, as we did a vanishing trick Paul Daniels would have been proud of. We didn't go far, just the next pub, the Yankee, and soon returned with a mob I knew was not big enough, but a mob that would at least let them know they were not at Norwich, and the day would not be plain sailing. The fight was brief and violent, and yes, we came off second best. One lad was thrown through Patch's window. I always thought he was Boro, but am now led to believe he was one of ours. Today, that fight in the middle of the street would mean at least 30 doors needing new hinges the following week, and people would get jail, no doubt. Then it got you a smack with those long sticks from the evil coppers, and a warning if you did not fuck off, you would get one shoved up your arse. At the ground, we told the lads that Boro were about. A few laughed, a few doubted, but not for long. It was one of the best days at Everton, running battles in the streets, fighting in the ground, and a replay at their place to look forward to. I will always remember the Boro end chanting Figaro, or something, all game. I never knew why. After the game, it was a free-for-all. Boro were one of the few mobs, you could count them on one hand in those days, who came out of the park end and went for it. It was even a couple were slashed and that was it until the replay or so, we thought. An hour later, the window came through in the red brick, an Everton stronghold, and that is when the rivalry really started. Any firm prepared to come down there and do that was game. Very fucking game. Another lad was cut, and the police soon ended what could have been a vicious brawl. Boro, you were lucky that night. The whole of County Road was gunning for you. You may not believe this, but we turned up at the replay. Another Middlesbrough author says we didn't. I'll tell you we did. We were boxed off by the police and had an armoury of weapons with us. We knew we needed them. How we laughed when Trevor Stevens scored in injury time of extra time, and we laughed louder when we won the toss for the right for home advantage in the second replay. We got back to the buses in one piece, unlike many who were in cars and vans. It was a bit daft, Boro battering them when they had to come back down in a week. Wounds not healed and all that. The second replay was carnage. Again, they brought it to Everton, but this time many who were picked off at Boro days earlier were after revenge and tooled up. The end result was that a dozen or so were chopped up, with one poor lad losing an eye according to the papers, who revelled in it all. It was all mindless and senseless, but at the time a part of football violence in the mid-80s. After that night, for years they came to us, we went to them. Casualties on both sides, wins and losses, bad days and good days. But apart from the very odd occasion, we always had it with each other, and each gained the respect of the other. One of my best days out was one shitty end-of-season game at Air Sum, when we fought all the way from the station to the turnstiles at the ground. No one took a backward step all day, not one step. The other was at the Riverside, when we went on minibuses to Darlow and arrived in Boro's Boozer unannounced. Shut the fire door behind you on the way out, lads. Frank Sinatra sang, "Regrets, I've had a few, but then again, too few to mention." I have had more than a few at Boro, believe me, and I take no pleasure in mentioning them. One was walking around Air, some thinking I was blending into the crowd, trying to bunk in the seats, getting sussed, and being surrounded by a moody firm of Boro youth. I had a pair of sheepskin mittens on, and the lads were ripping me. I plucked up the courage and mocked, "You'll all be wearing them in about a year." The reply came with a smack in the mouth, the taxing of the said items, and the warning to fuck off now before I take your bubble coat. Another was getting nicked at the Riverside and turning up in court a day late. Bad move. This was the same court that was full of lads with their names tattooed on the back of their necks. The worst was the Boxing Day sketch. I won't go into detail. Read Scally, read The Brick. 2 books, same story, bar a few minor discrepancies. Officially voted the worst day of my life off the pitch, and a lesson learned that Boro don't get mad, they get even. Still, I still think we did okay for the first couple of minutes, until their extra 300 turned up. After that it died a death, and things calmed down between us. Maybe we all got too old. I was the one who walked into Sam Dodd's and drank with you all before one game. Hutch watched my back, and we all agreed it was still on if we wanted it. With the request, tell your lads, no steel. It never happened, and is not such a bad thing, as at least no one is in jail, and we are all here to tell our own tales. At the end of the day, Everton were as good as most firms on their day when football hooliganism was at its height. Only bellends who act hard on their dad's computers will argue the toss. During this time, Boro were regarded as our bitterest rivals. That is not an insult, it's a compliment. They earned the respect of our main lads, and very few firms did that. Their firm was hard, and in the main, although Barnsley will disagree, fought fair. Like I said, I won't bullshit. Barnsley slate Boro for what happened that day. I interviewed them for a book about the history of every firm in the country, entitled Hooligans, What Else? And to this day they call Boro and call them big time for it. Knowing Paul as I now do, I am sure it will be an episode he includes in this book, as he, like me, tells it as it is. And if some people don't like hearing it as it was, I am also sure he will, in his assured manner, tell them to fuck off and read about Harry Potter instead. The following is from the book Scally, in which Andy Nichols goes into more detail about battles with Boro. Again, I will leave a link if you wish to buy this book. which is regarded as one of the best football casual books ever written. I was in the city centre early, and a few of us were having a drink in the Crown, which in those days was a bit of a meeting place when we ventured into town. It is a big, spacious pub a minute's walk from the station, and before CCTV was installed, it was the perfect lookout for strays. It had one entrance but two exits, and used to be ideal for an ambush. It was a short walk from the Yankee Bar too, which, although popular with Liverpool, was also used by us when the Crown was full or the busies were onto us in there. I had just ordered a bottle when the doors opened and a huge mob walked in. A big lad wearing a baseball cap walked to the bar and jokingly ordered 200 pints of bitter. I think he was joking anyway, but I'm not sure, as I didn't hang around to see if he paid for them. We shot to the Yankee Bar to see if there were any lads about, and only about 30 were in there. One of Liverpool's lads, Jed, said to me when I told him about the 200 Boro, "I'll get them out of there." He kept his word, as the minute he walked in there, the pub emptied, and he was chased back to the Yankee. They filled the road outside, and we had no chance of getting out, as the door was only wide enough for one at a time to go through. Boro didn't give a fuck, and started to force their way in, and we had a battle to keep them out. They were dead game, and although the first few were getting battered, the lads behind them kept forcing their way in. It was bedlam until one of our lads threw a stool through the window, and a few of us got out behind them. For a few seconds they backed off, but they weren't on the run. They seemed to take a look at our smaller numbers, and then started to walk away. Had we left it there and let them have a bit of a victory, I am sure they would have given us a walkover. We were a bit humiliated, however, as it had been years since any firm had shown like that so early in the day, apart from the Manx. We got it together and ran into the back of them, and another massive fight broke out. By now word had got around, and we had been joined by loads of lads from the other pubs around the station, and even blokes who were shopping and queuing for the pictures across the road. The Boro lads were shocked, as well as surprised, as I am sure they thought we would leave it. But once we were on top, we were not letting go, and for a few minutes they got battered. I was fighting with one lad when a bloke I have never seen before ran over and shouted, "Who's Everton?" I just nodded, as I was not winning this battle, and the bloke grabbed the Boro lad around the neck and threw him through a closed shop window. My saviour grunted something like, "Cheeky bastards," and then went back to his daily business. We ended up getting backed off when all the Boro regrouped and saw we were well outnumbered, and we were chased back into the Yankee. It ended up a standoff, as we were not going out, and they could still get through the door only in ones and twos. They left at the first sound of the police sirens. As they were walking away, a lad threw a big piece of plate glass at us, but missed, and Mark Duval picked it up and was a better shot, nearly taking a Boro lad's head off with his return of serve. The busies were well on their case now. Meanwhile, we all got taxis up to the ground, and there got a massive mob together. Loads were shocked that Boro had turned up with big numbers, as very few had heard they had a top mob. It wasn't long before they got to the ground, but they had a huge escort and were boxed off. We were hanging around when the bloke that had first walked into the pub and ordered the ale came over and asked who wanted a go. He was a fucking monster, but Carlos fronted him. The lad just turned his cap back to front and booted Carlos in the shin. He was a nutcase and walked off laughing. After the game, a draw. There was no real trouble, as they were kept in and most of them were put on buses back to the station. I was glad to see the back of the cunts, and hoped we could take the same numbers up there for the replay, as I was sure we would need them. The thing I remember from that day, apart from the nutcase in the cap, was that they didn't have many fans at the game, but those they did have were nearly all boys. That reminded me of Everton, as, until our team was successful, our away numbers were poor at some games, but when the turnout was low, it was all lads. That helped us in the 80s, as most followings had a large majority of normal fans, whereas we were 90% hooligans. The first time we went there by train as a firm was in about 1989. It was towards the end of the season and was a nothing game, We were doing crap, but still took 100 odd on the ordinary. I was with Kelly, who all the way there was saying he was going to give it a low one, as he was already on a football charge. We got off the train and walked out of the station, and a few lads fronted us. Kelly kept his word for about a second before putting the first one on his arse and was nicked within a minute of arriving. We bounced into the street and there were no great numbers of them, just small mobs, but they don't care up there, and we fought all the way to the ground. They were waiting in shops in groups of 5 or 6, letting us go past and then charging into us. They were fucking crackers, and battle after battle took place as they ambushed us. It was a fair way to Ayresome Park, and the walk must have taken over an hour. It was toe to toe all the way. One lad walked into a bin when we were in the town centre, and a busy told him to pick all the litter up. He made us carry on and then followed us, leaving the litter bug to get battered by them. Even the coppers were bonkers. There is a big ICI chemical factory up there, and I'm sure there has been a leak that sent the place haywire, because I have been all over the world and can say hand on heart that Middlesbrough is the nastiest place I have visited. By the ground, they mobbed up and came down alleys towards us. In those confined spaces, they had it sussed, as no more than a few could get at them. And some of the most ferocious fighting I have ever seen took place. You could not run or get off if you didn't fancy it, as there was no room to move, so you had to have it. And a few made names for themselves that day on both sides. At the end of the match, we got out early but were forced back in by the sheer weight of numbers on their side. All the small mobs before were now as one, and they had an awesome firm. We were kept in for ages. Later, about 50 of us got away from the escort but didn't find their mob. One Boro lad did meet us at the station, and instead of all the usual abuse that is thrown around, he said we were a boss firm and had given them their best go before a game for years. I wish there were more like him nowadays. All you seem to get is bullshit and posting crap on the internet. It's one big yawn. They had a few bad seasons after that game and were relegated, and by the time we played there again, our mob was a shadow if its former glory. We tried to fill a couple of coaches, but ended up with 3 minibuses. It looked like we were headed for embarrassment, but it turned out to be the day a new mob was formed. The Snorty 40. That trip became legendary. We parked up at Darlington Station and were not picked up by the busies, so had a few drinks and took the train into Middlesbrough. We piled out of the station and straight into their boozer. They must have thought we had big numbers, as they kicked the fire door open and ran out to escape. We stayed put in the bar, and when the busies turned up, they could not believe 40 odd had taken this Boro stronghold. Outside the street was filled with disgruntled smog monsters, as the Geordies call them, and we were herded out and marched through them to the ground. When they saw how few we had, there was a furious inquest in their ranks, and we could see them kicking off with each other. The venue and its name had changed, but it was still the same old walk to the ground. You had to battle all the way. Whether it was Ayresome or the riverside, there was no easy route. They made sure of that. They were in front of us, behind and all over the other side of the road. It went off at every junction and crossing, and they had the mentality that the police did not exist. They just kept fronting us. The local busies would say, "Pack it in, Billy," or "Stop it, Joe." They knew every fucking one of them, but rather than nick them, they'd dish out the odd slap or a baton thwack across the legs. We sussed this out, and once we realised we were not going to get nicked, we started taking it to them. We had 3 or 4 major offs, and only 2 lads got nicked. Jeff for spraying them with CS gas, and Kevin for not heeding his 4th warning to stop punching people. We made the ground, which was a lot less hostile than Ayresome. There were no alleys, and the big forecourt outside was easier to police. It was also easier to see how many they had, and the sight of the Snorty 40 marching towards their masses chanting, "We are evil," was one I will take to my grave. They were distraught, and even a few local busies said to me that we had done well getting there in one piece after our attack on their boozer and backing them off all the way to the ground.
The North East does, after all, offer real alternatives in pre-match attractions and meeting places.
Can I swear like? No. Brilliant. Just go all over the country in the beer and having a good laugh. That's what it is.
Marvellous. Marvellous. Spend your gyro on a Saturday, enjoy it. Few pints. That's what the North East's all about, isn't it? Spend your gyro, support the Boro. I suppose even the Newcastle fans have got the same feelings as us. We're all foolish, aren't we? We're the numdy-plums of the country.
It's an addiction. What it is, you're born in the Boro, you're proud to be from Boro, so you go and watch them, that's what it is. That's all there is. Enjoy yourself.
Oh, marvellous. I've followed the Boro all my life, since a 13, 12, 13-year-old. Love it. Got all the matches. I used to travel away, I don't now. Not so much anyway, only important games, but I love it. I love them. Season ticket holder. There he is. Buy it. £230 cost me. Love it. Every minute of it. Marvellous.
The Geordies always want the board out, don't they? The Geordies always want the board out. We always say, give us a fair deal and we'll support them ever more. Right? It's as simple as that. There's a lot of lads there. I'm an original Ayrsham Angel, by the way, along with my mate Chalky. We are the Ayrsham Angels. I do not miss a match. We are the Ayrsham Angels, and I most certainly do not miss a match. Oh yeah. We are the Ayrsham Angels, and we never miss a match. We will follow the Boro. Hello, hello, we are the Boro boys. Hello, hello, we are the Boro boys. We are the Ayrsham Angels and we never miss a match. We will follow the Boro. Hello, hello. Anyway, have a good day.
Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. If you subscribe, you will be notified when we release a new video. It could be your firm we make a video about next, so don't miss out and hit the subscribe button. You can find me on Facebook or email me if you have a good story to tell. See you next time.